You talked about transfer portal kids in one section. I believe you, kind of referred to it as fool's gold, or asked if it was fool's gold. And you looked at the success throughout the SEC with the portal. And, Florida has had a couple really big success stories here. Obviously, Graham Mertz is a success story for Florida. Ricky Pearsall ending up first in the draft. Osiris Torrance, although I guess if maybe that's a cheat because he came with him from Louisiana. But, Florida did just sign a couple really good pieces to the puzzle in the transfer portal. But high school classes are still king at this point, right?
Well, I mean, so the data says that. In fact, the data says high school recruiting's actually gotten a little bit more important in the SEC in recent years. And I think a lot of that has to do with you get natural churn in your recruiting classes. And if you have an elite recruiting class and one of your guys who's ranked, say, like 250th beats out a 5-star, you don't care.
Yeah.
It makes no difference. The five
Right.
star can go away. Like
Yeah.
you've got enough depth in your recruiting class to fill the spot. And really, the way I like to think of the transfer portal is it's like putting a band-aid on a bullet hole. Like you can cover that bullet hole for a little bit, but eventually you got to have surgery on the patient. And so recruiting is the surgery on the patient. It's we need to completely overhaul this thing and make sure that our young guys are growing into the older guys who can contribute. Now, I think Napier's actually done a pretty nice job of identifying talent. We've seen guys like
Yeah.
Kelby Collins, guys like ETN. Certainly, Jaden Ball looks like he's going to be really good. Kanan Daniels at running back in the spring game looked really good. Like you mentioned, Osiris Torrance bringing him in. We'll see about Cam Waits. He's had some injury problems there on the offensive line, but he's another one of those transfer portal guys. And then the guys on the back end, the DJ Douglases from Tulane, the Asa Turner from Washington, Triquez Bridges from Oregon. Those guys all look like they're going to play safety along with Jordan Castell, who was an all SEC level player or a freshman all SEC level player last year. So Florida should be much, much better on the back end because of the transfer portal. Like, I'm not saying the transfer portal isn't important. What I'm saying is the foundation of winning in the SEC is clearly still recruiting at the high school level. And then you go fill in those gaps with guys who've had success someplace else. But if all you're trying to do is win with transfer portal guys, I think you're going to struggle in the long term. Now, the good news is from where Florida's recruited, look, I'm a recruiting person who sits there and looks at this and says, well, we're not recruiting as well as Bama and Georgia. So, the sky is falling. Florida's still like a top 12 recruiting program in the country. And what you see with those top 12 teams is you see a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And so it doesn't preclude Florida from having a year where they jump up and bite a bunch of people and have a successful year. But what it does mean is there's a lot more variability in the outcome. And that's what you see. If you start looking at air bars of wins per season versus high school recruiting, the air bars get a lot smaller. As the recruiting gets better, the air bars get a lot wider as the recruiting gets a little bit worse. And so that's sort of what, like over a 4-year period, it's essentially a linear relationship. You got Vanderbilt on the very bottom, you got Georgia on the very top, and then everybody's sort of in between. And you on a 4-year period could predict just about where every SEC team is going to be from a record perspective. Not every year, but you can predict where they'd be over a 4-year period. So to me, that's a pretty strong indication that filling the cupboards from high school is still the way to go.